Imagine a vibrant discussion between people that includes both openness and critical thought in the pursuit of truth. The Purchasing Truth podcast is an experience, a journey, an exploration of the impact that negative messages in politics and the media have on our families, community, society, and nation. Join your hosts, Bill Stierle and Tom Hazard, to discover new concepts and language strategies that will reveal effective ways of establishing truth. This podcast series will tackle current events, leadership challenges, healthcare confusion, integrity in business, and many other areas that affect us all. Gain clarity and understanding of the various truth perspectives. Welcome to Purchasing Truth.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Purchasing Truth. I'm Tom Hazard, along with your host, Bill Stierle. And, Bill, as we're recording this, the nation is in shock, in mourning, and I think shock is probably the best word over the shooting in Uvalde, Texas, which I was reading. There have been roughly 220 mass shootings in the United States in 2022, and we are not even through the end of May at the time we're recording this, and 21 of those have been school shootings. So this is obviously dominating the news cycle, and I think the consciousness of everyone in America, whether you're pro gun rights or not. I mean, everybody is shocked and horrified, and I mean, I can't even begin to put proper context on all that. And you and I have been talking about this a little bit in preparation for this episode, and obviously it's a gigantic topic, but I think there are some things we can talk about around it that would be meaningful in a podcast like this.
I think so, Tom. And the thing is that there's the one of the biggest problems in communication is that how do we have a honest discussion about our emotions when they come up? And our emotions are activated by our needs. And what once happened is how do you get the need for protection or safety met, as well as the need for choice met regarding the gun owner and the people's belief about what choice looks like. And the title of the show is Purchasing Truth, which is using language and communication to get your point across, to be able to get something to stick, to rise above in marketing and sales, to be rising above in the political discourse so that you can get the thing that you're passionate about to be able to stick inside the mindset of the voter, inside the mindset of the purchaser. I mean, politics is about purchasing votes through the activation of beliefs. I mean, that's the best quote I can come up with. I mean, it's like you're trying to get somebody to vote by activating their belief or bias so they become a part of your tribe and they vote for you. And it's important from the First Amendment places to speak up about the difficulty it is to allow people to say various different points of view and be able to fight for the thing that is best for the nation versus the thing that's best for the individual. See, now all of a sudden it's like a little bit unsettling, because one of the common messages is that we're fiercely independent people that get to choose whatever the heck we want to do, and get to say whatever we want to say. And I think it's important for people to say what they need to say, because that's how you can become passionate about something.
It's how you become passionate. It's how you can start to heal. It's how you can, make sense of things in your mind. I mean, it's
get
very
things
important.
to go better. because
Now,
as soon as you don't talk about things, or as soon as you rely too heavily on rules or no talk or no speech, then you got the Russia shutdown thing that takes place where nobody can speak up because you can't even get the population to say what it needs to say, and all of a sudden the constriction takes place. So we've and it is a challenge to balance being passionate about something that really equates to the loss of life. Having an assault rifle being available to the choice of every American is not what the Second Amendment was written for. It says it right in there. Well regulated militia. Well regulated? That means the rules are well regulated. Right now, we are not well regulated. We're not living up to the Constitution.
no, we're not. I was actually reading, and of course, a lot of things are all over the media in this 48 hours since the shooting took place. And one of the things that's been amplified is how Texas has a law that allows anyone over 18 years old to be able to carry a firearm openly in public without even being licensed. And I was thinking, that's regulated. That really wasn't in alignment with my idea of well regulated.
It kind of doesn't. It kind of as soon as you split the belief, and then activate one part of the belief, which is I get freedom to own a gun on an individual basis. Well, that's not the best way to go about things, because that's not well regulated.
Yeah. So, Bill, you mentioned politics at the top, and I found it kind of ironic. I mean, here's what we see every time there's one of these shootings. You have the people that want more gun regulation amplifying that message, saying now's the time, it's way past the time, we should have done this already. And then you have those that are in favor of gun owner rights or gun rights in general, saying now's not the time to be political about this. Now's not the time for us to play politics with this issue, because they say because everybody's in shock and the emotions are so raw. And I find that statement ironic, because just the mere fact of Ted Cruz did it just yesterday, as did many people on the right side of the aisle, more conservatives, saying now's not the time to be political about this. And the reality is, even those elected officials saying now's not the time to make this political, in fact, is a political statement. They are actually making it political by saying that. So I found that ironic.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I appreciate what you're saying, because that's one way to purchase truth. It's called using shame and guilt as a way to shut down a honest discussion about a policy issue. So the same as Beto O'Rourke, talking to the governor in an open forum, and somebody trying to yell at him, you made this political.
Yeah, you're making this a stunt, a political
You're making
stunt.
this as a political stunt. And the answer is that this is a policy problem. It's not a political problem. This is politics. It's about policy. And I am talking about policy here as a citizen. If it was a political stunt, then there would be other things going on here. But what's going on here is that this guy up here has a terrible policy that is killing kids. That's the problem. It's a policy problem.
Right.
So I think we're talking about a policy problem here, aren't we? No, we're trying to mourn the loss of children in this setting and having an open discussion about it. Well, if you're having an open discussion about it, let's talk about changing the policy then. Would anybody be willing to stand up here can I hear somebody support me on the policy change that none of us here in this room like kids getting killed by assault weapons? Is everybody can I hear anybody say vote for this right now? And the whole room would erupt in applause. And the minority that are holding on to the belief bias put in their head by gun advocates are let on the island, going like, oh, I've been duped too. I don't like this. Anybody that's not applauding right now is okay with what just happened here.
Well, the interesting thing, I think we have to admit, though, Beto O'Rourke in that moment, he did how do we say act and make a political stunt out of that, because he was clearly out of order for whatever presentation or hearing or meeting was going on there. He disrupted it on purpose to make a point and to get attention. Now, I agree with you, Bill. He could have used certain language that would have purchased that truth away and hijacked that hearing, right? And he ended up going outside, obviously being escorted out by the officers for disrupting the meeting, but had the full attention of the media. No longer was the media interested in whatever was going on inside the room.
That's right.
And he gave a very impassioned speech answering questions of the media that was highlighting how big a problem this is. So he accomplished his goal for sure in that moment. Maybe he could have done it better,
right? That would be a different discussion, correct? And he purchased truth about what's the real discussion. The real discussion is that I'm being an advocate for something. Now, while the people that were mourning while the shooting took place, Beto O'Rourke canceled all of his political events that he had scheduled. He had all these, I'm going to be on this show, I'm going to be on this show. He was doing this, and he canceled all of his, and he flew back to Texas from New York. In contrast, the governor went to a fundraiser the night after. He didn't go to the memorial service of the people that got shot. He went to a fundraiser. Now you think about the contrast of characters there. It's like, I'm staying on focus with my voters. I'm going to go to this fundraising event instead of going where Beta went as the two. I'm going to go to the memorial service. To see the contrast is that how does one lead and one govern? It's a delight to be in a nation that you and I get to have this conversation and we get to put it out to the world. That's kind of a delight, and something that not every nation gets or every individual gets on the planet. Our nation provides us this through the First Amendment. And there's going to be people that can be mad about my point and your point of view. But the alternative turns into all kinds of funny memes. And I think you've seen some comedy pieces to come up that were going like, well, what are we left with then? What are we left with is that somebody just kind of trying to white knuckle tragic events instead of facing and making clean policy about how to prevent tragic events.
Well, it's about, so true, Bill. Yeah. I mean, the cliche, and I've sort of mentioned part of it up front, the unfortunate cliche of these situations is people on the who are in alignment with the Second Amendment, unfettered access to guns, tend to say now's not the time to make this political. And when one of these shootings happens, and then often say we need to be giving our thoughts and prayers to the families that have lost loved ones and all that. And while certainly we all need to do that, and that is the right thing to do, to be thinking about them on the one hand, or that's just, I think, a portion of what we should be doing personally. But on the on the side in opposition, they then keep calling for more gun rights and gun restrictions. And so, yes, a lot of memes come out, a lot of cartoons come out, and there's one in particular from the Star Tribune that I saw that, I don't know that it's trying to be funny, but it's trying to illuminate something that may not be amplified enough. And it's certainly, if not amusing, at least shocking enough to get attention. So the meme, it says up at the top, thoughts and prayers, thoughts on the left, prayers on the right. There is a caricature of a representative in our government. He has a briefcase on the floor beside his feet that says GOP on it. So it's clearly intended to be a Republican representative. And he's standing there with his eyes closed, holding his hands together in prayer. They're also on the ground next to his briefcase is a newspaper with the headline "School Shooting" on it. So you understand what this meme is about. Then there's two bubbles, one underneath thoughts and one underneath prayers. And the bubbles are coming out from each side of his head, like this is this representative's thoughts and prayers. So for those of you obviously listening to this as a podcast, I'm painting a mental picture of what this is. But anybody of you can go to the blog post at purchasingtruth.com and see this meme because we've got it there for you. The thought is, let's see, what's the absolute least I can do on this issue, right? Is what's implied. What's the absolute least I can do? And the prayer is, God, let this blow over soon. Like, they're hunkering down, trying not to, do anything but to appear, sympathetic. Thoughts and prayers go out to people, which, yes, I mean, those people need a lot of support, especially if they've lost. I mean, I can't even imagine it's as a parent, it would be the most horrific thing you could ever experience in life to lose a child, especially so violently.
I mean, the thought in the prayer is some things that people can do at a distance that's safe. I don't have to fly to Texas. I can have a thought and a prayer towards Texas. I can have a thought and a prayer towards a tsunami killing people in Japan. I can have a thought and a prayer about the Uyghurs in China. I can have a thought and a prayer about the people in Ukraine. I mean, there's a lot of thoughts and prayers to go around because I'm in a bubble in my place and I'm helpless and hopeless about dealing with those bigger things. And it means that I care, but I can't take an action about it. When a politician says it and then doesn't really take a protective and a public service action to change policy, that's when the phrase or the idea of hypocrite comes in, because you're saying a thought and prayer, but you're the person that's in the position to prevent that thing, the 17,199 deaths that have happened through shooting this year, and we're halfway there.
2022. Wow.
2022, 17,000.
That's just in America?
Yep.
Wow.
17,000. So we're going to have we'd rather and regrettably the way messaging works is all you've got to do is just purchase the person's belief and their bias to agree with you. And then the person doesn't want to change their belief. They don't want to change their bias. But what happens if their belief and bias is wrong? A well-regulated militia is really where the truth is. It's the belief and the bias is that what the Second Amendment means is that any person can own any gun. Well, that's not really what the Second Amendment says.
Well, but Bill, right now I'm thinking back to some past episodes we've done and discussions we've had, and I appreciate what you're saying, and I think you're speaking truth of what the Second Amendment says. But to use your own words, I mean, at some point the facts don't matter here. What message is being amplified is, hey, Americans, you're going to lose your rights if it's like if you give an inch on the Constitution, we're going to no longer be America. It's a sort of slippery slope argument, right? That if we put any regulation on guns, then we're betraying the Constitution, and
Right.
this isn't America anymore. I mean, obviously I'm exaggerating this a bit, but no one's going to listen to a lesson about what the real intent of the Second Amendment
No,
was.
no, they really aren't going to listen to the lesson, because the emotion and the belief have been really kind of hijacked a bit. And, the conservative, it doesn't matter the fact that the conservative Supreme Court Justice Warren Burger said the gun lobby's interpretation of the Second Amendment is one of the greatest frauds. He said, I repeat the word fraud, on the American people by special interest groups that I've ever seen in my lifetime. He's calling the narrative of the Second Amendment about, and it says and he said the real purpose of the Second Amendment was to ensure that the states, armies, and the militia would be maintained for the defense of the state. That's what the gun's for, is the defense of the state. The very language of the Second Amendment refutes any argument that it was intended to guarantee every citizen the unfettered right to have any kind of weapon he or she desires. And that fact, you're just reading it out loud, bounces off the brain of the listener saying, no, that's not what it means. And because they've been marketed, they've been sold that message, like you said, Tom, is that it's going to bounce off their brain. The truth doesn't really land. The fact that this person is stating what the law is actually is being discarded.
Well, and that's why a meme like this becomes really important, because it kind of
Right.
amplifies a message. It has us, look at a different way. It kind of sinks in. There's another one that I read that was a statement that, which was being critical of the 50 senators in Congress who are Republican, who are really, even though 90% of Americans want more regulation on firearms to help protect, the citizens of the country, to protect people from gun violence, that they're blocking, because of the powerful gun lobby, and that is, supporting their campaigns. They will not even entertain the idea of passing legislation, or even, considering legislation that is going to be in alignment with the 90% of Americans that want it. And so the statement that was made, that again is one that catches your attention, that I read, was those 50 senators care more about protecting embryos than they do 10-year-olds at school.
Very unsettling. Yeah, very unsettling. And where does the battle get won here for truth? And more importantly, when a person's belief and their bias gets to be advocated for the powers that be, and the powers that be are not accountable for the good of the nation. They're only accountable for the values of their constituents at the local level. There's some problems, because a local problem is different than a national problem. It's like, this is a local problem here, and so what would it be like? Because there's already counter programming that's already taking place in mass media for Sean Hannity getting on and spelling out his plan. Sean Hannity spelt out a plan about how they could arm the teachers, arm the principals, get retired law enforcement, get retired military to volunteer to work at the school, and to only have one exit going in and going out of a school, and to literally militarize a school setting, just so that and the numbers aren't there to actually getting done. The ability to actually run such a program called militarizing or protecting schools from these kinds of situations is so not feasible. It's just as not feasible as putting a border wall for immigrants from one part of the Pacific all the way to the Atlantic, all the way through to, the Gulf of Mexico along Mexican border. It's not realistic, cost effective, or, financially viable to do that idea. But that's okay. But the person that's listening to it says, yes, that's I'm in agreement with that bias. My bias is I don't want anybody to take my guns away. So therefore the environment has to change to me and my bias, rather than the environment doesn't have to change to your bias. We'd want to buy your gun back, which is the alternative narrative is, we kind of don't want as many assault rifles to take place. So,
Yeah. Wow.
very, very
I heard those messages being amplified by many people on Fox News in the last 48 hours, and just
very
the naivete of the argument. I mean, especially our schools here in California, for instance, are all open air, and there is not one entrance into a school. A typical elementary school, there's about 20 different entrances, because each classroom is its own separated thing with a door to the outside.
Yes.
You're going to have 20 volunteers. You're going to be able to get enough volunteers who are willing to carry a gun and stand outside of a school all day and protect them. I mean, it's just unrealistic. So then you're going to create a border wall around the entire school property. I mean, it's not a realistic solution.
It really
and
isn't.
It also, the idea that you're going to get enough volunteers to do it so you don't have to pay them, I don't think there's enough retired military or police that are willing to do that.
Right. Exactly. Very, 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 very challenging. Very challenging. It's almost like there's a battle for perspective. And my request or my creative idea to purchase truth back is basically for some Democrat that has courage and languaging skills to promote a bill called the Protect Child, School Children for America Act. And it's spelling out a multi-billion-dollar project to fund the protection of the schools, because out of the start of this year, there's been 21 school shootings, and that's clearly enough to make a concerted efforts to protect children. How much is it going to cost? How are you going to run it? And immediately it will fall apart. It falls apart because the argument is not there that it is feasible, doable, cost effective, and things like that. There's other ways to solve or at least take a step towards that problem.
Well, and I think if a Democrat brought that bill forward and then got Republicans to engage in it, the Republicans eventually would abandon the idea, because they're going to say, well, it costs too much and we can't afford that. And, the budget conscious, fiscally responsible, Republicans, which is, traditionally has been one of their, absolute bedrock principles, is that, they're not going to want to deficit spend enough to actually do what it would take to protect all the schools in America. I mean, and then it sort of could amplify that that's not the solution. Is that right, Bill?
Correct. Yeah, it's you want to almost create the absurdity of the experience, so it makes the promise and the hollowness of, well, you're not doing anything about it other than saying something that won't work. You've got to tether out. Here's the funny thing. It's kind of like weird because you and I both have children, and they say nutty things. They say things that don't work.
Sure.
And it's the main thing is not to get in an argument with something that doesn't work, to actually pull the thing out of them that doesn't work and says, gosh, I really see that you're using some creativity around that thing. And then, gosh, I wonder how that's going to work. And I wonder how that's going to work. Oh yeah. You're practicing good thinking with them. You're tethering out the illusion, the ability. So you're 6 years old and you want to go to the pub. Great. Let's go to the pub. You want to go to the pub? It's like, yeah, Mom, I want to go to the pub. There's a great video, a short video of a little Irish girl that's 6 years old that wants to go to the pub. I don't understand. I want to go to the pub she's talking. It's very funny meme, a short video, TikTok. But it's the challenge is that we have as human beings is that we don't have a safe place to talk about putting things into perspective. How much will it cost to protect every school? How much staffing would you need? How much training would you need? I mean, you don't even want to buy crayons for teachers, for God's sake.
Right.
How are you going to buy guns for teachers?
Well, and that's going to really illuminate the absurdity of the suggestion. So
that's correct. Eliminate the absurdity.
So many communication challenges around this issue, Bill, and my goodness, we could spend, days on end talking about it, but I really appreciate your perspective. And I think what we've been able to accomplish in this episode, which is at least putting some perspective on some of the challenges, and hopefully can convince some people to think about it differently.
Safety, protection. How do you balance that with freedom and choice? How do we deal with the mourning now that's necessary and the action that's required to really do something that's going to make a policy change and, move beyond thoughts and prayers and move to, change in policy. That's where we got to stick the landing, change the policy.
Very much needed. I think that's painfully obvious.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for listening. More to come. This is a big issue and it's really important to discuss it and get multiple points of view out so that we can find an answer to prevent this kind of tragedy from taking place.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this Purchasing Truth podcast. We trust that you have enjoyed this engaging and thought-provoking conversation. Our hope is that you've received value, found clarity, and broadened your truth perspective in this episode. If you did, leave us a review or visit our website, purchasingtruth.com. Join us again for another informative and content-rich discussion here at the Purchasing Truth podcast. Don't just accept whatever information comes your way. Join the discussion. Discover your own voice. Purchase your own truth.